Imagine being on a fortress surrounded by hilly landscapes, at a time when the echo of the great rulers of Europe intertwined with the small but bold voice of a people that does not want to give up its freedom. We are in the middle of the 15th century and we are talking about the Republic of San Marino, a tiny state located on Mount Titano, which is prudently facing the chessboard of greater powers. Having explored in the previous episode the medieval roots and the birth of this community, today we will delve into the modern age, a time when San Marino could easily have disappeared under the weight of lordships, regional states and papal ambitions. How did this small entity preserve itself as powerful dynasties flourished and collapsed around it, while papal nepotism and the rise of national kingdoms changed the map of Europe? Well, we will discover that San Marino was by no means a small island, immobile over time, but a dynamic community able to manage its alliances, to renew its institutional system, and to invoke the name of the founder saint in order to legitimize its autonomy. Here begins our second episode of The Oldest Republic, dedicated to the modern age, immediately after the intro. Welcome to The Oldest Republic. I'm Carlotta. Come join me in this amazing adventure. Enjoy the episode. With the beginning of the modern age, Europe witnesses the formation of national states and the appearance of many regional principalities. Specifically in Italy, lordships and then duchies, grand duchies and marquisates are consolidated, while some surviving republican communes, such as Venice or Lucca, maintain a collective system of government. In the center north of the peninsula, a territory like that of San Marino, tiny and contiguous to the church-state, finds itself navigating in an unstable political landscape, where the great lords aim to enlarge their domains. Romagna and Montefeltro, which surround San Marino, are lands of castles and ancient noble families, often at wars and engaged in clashes or precarious alliances. The Malatesta from Rimini and the Montefeltro from Urbino contend for control of large portions of the Apennines and the coast, while the papacy tries to consolidate its power in the legations. In this struggle of interests, San Marino is a small entity, just 61 square kilometers and a few hundred inhabitants in the 16th century, but with a valuable strategic garrison, thanks to the morphology of San Marino. As we saw in the previous episode, the institutional heart of San Marino is the community of free inhabitants who for centuries felt that they were heirs to a gift from San Marino. The word republic in reference to San Marino appears gradually in documents from the 16th century onwards. San Marino never becomes a family feud, but evolves into an oligarchic government, dominated by some local families who elect two captains regents every 6 months. Since 1571, the Arengo, which is the ancient assembly of all the heads of the families, stops being summoned. Power is handed over permanently to the Council of the Sixties, which is renewed by co-optation and chooses the captain's regent from among the members of the most influential houses. The Republic is thus transformed into an oligarchy with limited participation, but continues to keep alive the idea of a libertas, inherited from the ancient rights and protections attributed to the founder saints. While in the Middle Ages, the Republic of San Marino had already demonstrated the ability to resist the claims of the bishops of Rimini and Montefeltro, the modern age brings with it new and more delicate conflicts. In the 16th century, powerful figures emerge, such as Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, along with the season of ecclesiastical nepotism that reached its peak with Paul III Farnese. The first episode that puts the survival of the Republic at risk is the military occupation of 1503 by Cesare Borgia, also known as Duke Valentino. A charismatic figure, inspiring the Prince of Machiavelli, Borgia invades and annexes San Marino to his dominions, taking advantage of the general instability of Romagna. For a few months, the population of San Marino becomes subservient to his will. Only the death of Pope Alexander VI and the ascent to the papal throne of Julius II allows the San Marino people to escape Duke Valentino. who quickly lost the support of the papacy and left San Marino. A few decades later, in 1543, another event threatens the autonomy of San Marino. Fabiano da Monte San Savino, a local nobleman strongly linked to the Papal State, tries to occupy the territory of San Marino militarily. The context is that of the War of Salt, a tax imposed by the Church on this commodity of primary necessity. The idea that the San Marino people should pay for salt from the Cervia salt pans and thus recognize papal sovereignty leads Fabiano to try a military action. The sources tell, however, that on the 4th of June a thick fog enveloped the area, preventing Fabiano's army, divided into two contingents, from rejoining and conquering the mountain, saving the San Marino people from submission. The people shouted at the miracle, attributing the fog to the intervention of Saint Quirino, who the Catholic Church recalls precisely on the 4th of June, and they established in his honor a feast that was celebrated until 1979. This episode is part of the climate of tensions that animate the 16th century Romagna and symbolizes yet another act of resistance by a community that is determined to remain independent. In 1549, a last attempt at annexation was promoted by Lionello Pio da Verrucchio. This attempt also fails. These repeated threats lead San Marino to define its republican identity more clearly, marking the differences from a papal state, which, especially in the first half of the 16th century, shows itself eager for new lands, to favor cardinals and nephews of the Pope on duty. Parallel to military and political events, San Marino is living an era of religious fervor. In late 16th century, the cult of San Marino was strengthened on Mount Itano, enriched by narratives that exalted his role as protector of libertas. When, in 1586, bones believed to be relics of the saint were found, popular devotion exploded, and San Marino was filled with celebrations and ceremonies that combined the civil and the religious dimensions. The Saint Basilica, now a symbolic place where the relics are kept, becomes the center of a spiritual and at the same time civil power. This interweaving of religion and politics was further consecrated in 1600, the year in which the new statutes of the Republic of San Marino were issued. It is a collection of laws that regulate in an organic way the institutional structure of San Marino. They are printed in a volume entitled Statuta Decreta ac Ordinamenta Illustris Rei Publice ad Perpetue Libertatis Terrae Sancti Marini, where the image of the saint appears, almost as a seal of the idea that the community exists by will and under the protection of Marino. The statutes of the 1600 codified the presence of the Council of the Sixties as a governing body, and reaffirmed the practice of choosing every 6 months 2 captains regent, in a model of shared leadership. Religion pervades the pages of the new statutes. The figure of Marino is legally linked to the protection of the territory, as if the saint were, in symbolic form, the master of the state, while the faithful are responsible for administering the country. At the same time, the ancient Arengo, which until a century earlier gathered the heads of families, is no longer summoned, establishing the definitive affirmation of a city oligarchy. The border with the church-state remains, however, quite blurred. The Republic tries to remain free from both supreme powers, that is, from the Pope and the Emperor, as stated in some scholarly sources of the time. It is a strategy based on constant negotiation, frequent calls for the protection of the saint, and pragmatism, which during the 17th century proved effective. Let us ride swiftly through the centuries and arrive at a truly crucial moment in the history of San Marino. The 18th century represents a very delicate phase in which the Republic of San Marino is in danger of even disappearing due to tensions between the papacy, the Habsburg Empire, and the local powers. The most striking case is the occupation of 1739 by Cardinal Giulio Alberoni, papal legate in Romagna. The episode is part of the climate of instability linked to the wars of the European succession, when Tuscany passes to the Habsburgs' Lorraine, and there is a fear that imperial influence might spread in central Italy, endangering the papal dominions. San Marino, as a strategic enclave, does not escape the attention of the legate. The occasion is offered when a former captain regent, Pietro Lolli, accused of plots against the government to reintroduce the ancient Arengo, is arrested. The fact that Lolli was protected by an ecclesiastical privilege, the so-called Patente della Congregazione Lauretana, gives Cardinal Alberoni the excuse to intervene. In the autumn, Alberoni marches towards the borders of San Marino, hoping that some of the San Marino people, those who want to bring down the reigning oligarchy, will see him as a liberator. On October 17, 1739, his troops entered the territory of San Marino, welcomed at Serravalle, but the central government did not intend to submit. On October 25th, the cardinal himself convenes a ceremony in the Saint Basilica, in which the inhabitants should swear loyalty to him on behalf of the Pope. Surprisingly, under the guidance of figures such as Girolamo Gozzi, several members of the council refuse, claiming their freedom loudly and shouting, "Long live San Marino! Long live the Republic! Long live freedom!" Looting ensued against the homes of the rebels, and the situation becomes dramatic. In the end, the members of the council were forced into submission, at least formally. Alberoni established his own government in San Marino, imposing temporary regulations and constitutions. For months, the Republic is in fact commissioned. But the resistance of the San Marino people is strong. The general objective is not to be incorporated into the state of the Church. From Rome, the old pontiff Clement XII was perplexed at the turn of events, and at the request of numerous petitions, sent an apostolic visitor, Monsignor Enriquez, to verify the situation. When Enriquez arrives at San Marino, the members of the council are called to vote, and almost all of them are against the papal occupation and in favor of restoring freedom. The Pope, also driven by international tensions, France, Austria, and other powers observe carefully, decides to return autonomy to San Marino on February 5, 1740. Since then, the feast of Saint Agatha, remembered precisely on February 5th, becomes a national holiday in memory of the end of the occupation by Alberoni. It is a fundamental date that renews for the San Marino people the awareness of their ability to resist. In the same period, documents such as the Placito Feretrano and the Processo di Sant'Anastasio were discovered, which were used strategically by the ruling class to try to prove that San Marino had a very ancient autonomy, dating back as far as the 9th century, to the year 885 AD. Although these texts are disputed by some scholars, they become part of the complex game of historical legitimacy. The 18th century, therefore, represents a stormy season, but it ends with yet another confirmation that San Marino is able to protect its perpetual freedom. When we talk about the modern age, we generally refer to the period from the end of the Middle Ages to the great changes of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era. Even for San Marino, the end of the 18th century marks the turn to the contemporary era. Geopolitical transformations led revolutionary France to enter Italy in 1796, led by the young general Napoleon Bonaparte. He upsets the balance of princes and local powers, proclaiming sister republics and bringing down ancient regimes. In 1797, Napoleon was in Romagna and noted that there was already a free republic on Mount Titano. He decides, in a skillful and symbolic gesture, to respect its independence and to recognize its institutions. It even offers the San Marino people the opportunity to enlarge their territory, an idea that the San Marino government politely rejects. It is the famous episode in which Antonio Onofri, a San Marino politician of great charisma, replies that the country is proud of being small. Thanks to this prudence, the Republic does not suffer harm, and Bonaparte sees the small state as an opportunity for propaganda, so the act of respect for it allows him to present himself as a defender of Republican freedom. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Italian peninsula was divided and then reunited several times into Napoleonic kingdoms and departments. San Marino, nestled in that area, survives without being annexed. Later, with the fall of the Napoleonic epoch and the return of papal power, the Republic resumed its former role as an enclave in the church state, but the events of the Italian Risorgimento saw it once again forced to play a game of balances among powers. The most well-known episode is certainly the arrival of Giuseppe Garibaldi in 1849, fleeing after the collapse of the Roman Republic, together with his wife Anita and his troops. San Marino welcomes him, not without diplomatic difficulties of course, and allows him to escape the Austrian troops. It is a gesture of solidarity and at the same time a confirmation of the hospitality that San Marino had already offered to other political refugees. With the unification of Italy, proclaimed in 1861, San Marino is not absorbed into the new kingdom, but on the contrary, it enters into a convention with it in 1862, which enshrines the friendship and freedom of this small state. The presence of precise borders with Italy replaces the century-old ones with the Papal State, and the Republic redesigns its diplomatic relations in a more modern sense. It was also the time when Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, responded to the captain's region by calling the San Marino people great and good friends, accepting honorary citizenship as a sign of friendship. It is a highly symbolic event, strengthening the idea of San Marino as a free nation, ready to forge relations with its most distant international partners. Thus, at the end of the modern age and at the beginning of the contemporary age, San Marino has consolidated the essential features of his character: an oligarchic, formally republican government, strong devotion to the founder saints, an intertwining with the church but not a submission, and above all, a pragmatism that translates into alliances and careful diplomacy. It is a very small state that moves with great skill within the great history and has managed to avoid annexation and the emptying of its freedom by renewing its identity. With this second episode, we ideally close the modern age and are ready to move into a 19th and early 20th century full of ferments. There will be moments of crisis, internal discussions, and dreams of change, but the lesson that the past gives us is clear. San Marino survived not only by chance, but thanks to the ability of its inhabitants to smartly manage relations with the powers, changing without changing its nature. If you found this window on the modern age interesting, continue to follow us on the Oldest Republic. The story of San Marino, among stubbornness, diplomacy, and a bit of luck, never ceases to surprise. Thank you for listening, we'll talk in a week, and until the next time, goodbye.